Welcome to Retreat Affairs. This is your host Sascha Kaus. I'm super happy that you have found the podcast. If you're hearing this, you're listening to our free feed that will only feature partial episodes of the podcast. If you're interested in the full conversation and all content, you need to subscribe at retreataffairs.com. There, you will get access to the full recording and a private RSS feed that you can add to your favorite podcatcher, and you will be able to access other subscriber-only content. I never want money to be the reason why you can't listen to the podcast. So if you can't afford a membership, there's an option at retreataffairs.com to request a free account, and I grant 100% of those requests, no questions asked. Hey wonderful soul, welcome to Retreat Affairs. Today I welcome Claudia Spahr on the show. Claudia is an author, speaker, and visionary, and she's the founder of Holy Mama Retreats, where she holds space for mothers and children to go on retreat together. You can find Claudia and Holy Mama Retreats on their website, holymama.info, or you can become friends on facebook.com/holymamaretreats, or follow her on Instagram @_holymama_. Claudia has been hosting retreats for almost 15 years. After a successful career in media, she started her retreat adventure with building up a retreat center in Goa, India. A few years later, when she returned to Europe, she created Holy Mama. Being a mother of 3 young kids, she saw the need for retreats that could be attended by mothers together with their children. Since 2013, she has been holding space for mothers from all over the world, and Claudia has gathered a team of dedicated people around her who help her to create a safe and nurturing space for her small guests and their mummies. I've met Claudia for the first time about 2 years ago, when I had the chance to help out in the kitchen on one of her retreats in Ibiza. And even before that first meeting, I heard about the beautiful work that she's doing. I got a little glimpse of how much extra work and attention to detail has to go into a retreat when there are not only grown-up yogis attending. The majority of retreats are still designed for adults. I have no kids myself, but I love the idea that a retreat can also be an experience that we can have as a whole family. This episode of the podcast is a little shorter than the usual ones, and we didn't get to talk about all the amazing things that Claudia is doing. Nevertheless, there's a lot of wisdom and insight in everything that she shared with me. This is why I want to take the opportunity to tell you that besides running retreats, Claudia is also sharing her wisdom and knowledge with other retreat hosts and individuals who are interested in becoming retreat leaders. Claudia offers online courses in which she guides others to become retreat hosts and start their own retreat business. There are not many options and people out there who share their knowledge in this field, and I think it's a wonderful and great thing to do, as this is a way in which we can learn from each other and create deep and meaningful experiences for those who trust in us and dedicate their time to go on a retreat. Claudia is a pioneer in her field, and it's remarkable to see what she has created. Welcome to the show, Holy Mama Claudia Spahr. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me.
It's my pleasure.
You've been running retreats for quite a long time. How did you actually get into hosting retreats for yourself?
By default, by complete default. Well, I was doing yoga. I was in the yoga world, but I was never trained to be a yoga teacher. I never set it as my big dream to open a yoga retreat center on the beach. And in 2007, I think it was, I was 3 months pregnant with my oldest child, and I'd just done this kind of gig, this journalism gig where I was paid a decent amount of money to go on holiday. So me and my ex-partner, who's the father of the child, we decided to go to Goa and have a beach holiday. We went to India. First we went to an ashram and did some meditation, the classic, and then we ended up on a beach in Goa, and we were offered a piece of land, and it was kind of the last thing I wanted to do was run a hospitality, be in the hospitality industry. I'd always waitressed as a student, and it wasn't really, didn't think it was what I wanted to do. But to combine it with yoga in nature, it somehow it worked. It fit together, and it was an amazing journey to see how when people come from the cities, sometimes the simple fact of them taking off their shoes, just being in the sand, hearing the waves, because we were in beach huts, literally by the sea, the healing qualities are just, miraculous. The reset that happens when people get into that, just releasing all the stress. So I saw, I really saw the transformation that yoga and yoga holidays provide. And there was kind of no going back. It kept finding me again without me pursuing it or running after it. Retreats just keep finding me.
But you said you started with running a retreat center in India, and it wasn't really your dream. But how did it happen that, once of a sudden you just start doing retreats, or you have a retreat center? Mm-hmm. It sounds like for many people this is the dream to do. This is what everybody is looking into. I want to do my own retreat center. At least this is my dream at some point. Mm-hmm.
Well, there is an element to this story which you could say there was an alignment, and even though I'm not a big fan of this whole law of attraction that you think of something and you're able to manifest it instantly, or it doesn't really happen like that. But I do believe that there's this being in the right environment, having the right feeling, so that there is this kind of vibrational thing that goes on. So you could say I was already in that yoga world, doing yoga regularly, and as me and my ex-partner, we were really living the simple life. We were taking the motorbike and going on these trips, these excursions to these remote beaches, and just really enjoying being out of the matrix of kind of everyday life. And he actually said to me, he said it with so much intention and so much clarity. He said, I want to live here for at least a year. I want to be able to spend time with my child. Remember, I was 3 months pregnant at the time. And I want to be more, lead a more simple life. And bang, within 3 days, the Indian guy, the Goan guy who owned this piece of land, approached us and said, would you like to rent it from me? It's up for grabs. And my first reaction was kind of not really, but then we looked at another yoga place in the north of Goa, and it kind of inspired us to try it. And then we went back in the summer to Europe and started creating a website. And this was a time when the internet was just starting to take off, that people would book holidays online. They were starting to trust, that this was working. So in a way, we kind of got in at a really good time, and started advertising a resort that didn't even exist yet. So you could say in a way that we got the money up front to build the place, which.
So you were selling a dream.
We were selling a dream, yeah. And I train retreat leaders, so I tell them, first, you have to have the idea, you have to have the imagination. The human imagination is so powerful. And I think as we're going through this transition globally, and we're a lot of us know that the environment is so important. We have to imagine these new aeroplanes and cars and machines and ways we can function before we can create them. I mean, the human imagination is very powerful. So to take it to this retreat example, we basically imagined what it could be like. I knew the yogashala has to be in the middle, looking at the sea, because you get these beautiful sunsets in Goa at around 6 o'clock. You can time them perfectly with, afternoon yoga. So it was obvious, some things were just so obvious to me how we needed to do it. And we also knew, we did a bit of a recce whilst we were there, how the huts should look, because all the other resorts on the beach at the time, they were using this ugly plywood, and we knew, no, we have to use natural materials. We have to use this amazing straw they have and this bamboo. So we took some pictures of what we thought the huts could kind of look like, and very simple, beautiful, natural fibers. And so we had some photographs, and then I wrote the text, because that's kind of my background, coming from writing. And also there's so much you can do with words. You can really sell something. I mean, marketing professionals spend years crafting this, but it was very authentic. It really came from this place of this is a paradise, and it really was at the time. This being close to the ocean, connected to nature and to your own body by getting into your body. I mean, yoga has this incredible way of getting us into our bodies and out of our minds that, as most people in the modern world, absolutely need to do.
How long did it take you to actually bring everything to life with this center?
So we were there, we kind of signed the piece of paper, the contract, in March. We came back to Europe, built the website, and we were there in September building it. So this is all within 6 months. And, in the meantime, I gave birth as well. So we went out there with a 10-week-old baby, and a couple of people who had booked, and I think when we first opened, we were still taking people kind of off the street, people who kind of walked to the end of the beach and were looking for accommodation. And in a way, that first season was kind of magical, because it was a very family atmosphere, in that we were this young family running this resort. There was a lot of personal, we knew every single client. We had a lovely team of mainly Nepali, North Indian, all guys. And we had a good chef. It was just there was a lot of heart in it. And I think people saw that. And we also we had some great yoga teachers who decided to take the risk to come to a place that had no reputation yet whatsoever, just based on their resonance. I mean, this is also a question of, I was talking about alignment and vibration before. There's a certain resonance. You could say if you're on the same fractal is another way to describe it, which I'm taking from the human design language. If you're on that person's fractal, and they resonate with you, then they'll team up with you. So we had this with a famous yoga teacher from the UK called Simon Lowe, who was one of the founders of a big studio there called Try Yoga. And he had been looking to come to India, and he looked at a few different places that were much more established than ours. But after a simple telephone conversation, he just went, that's the right vibe. That's the vibe I want. And he took the risk, and he came back 3 years in a row. And thanks to that, in a way, we got a lot of media coverage, including one of these Guardian articles that called us one of the best top 10 yoga resorts in the world. So within 3 years, we went from, converting a plywood beach shack into something that looked a bit more sustainable and eco-friendly, to being one of the best yoga resorts in the world. Kind of a fluke, but that's the way sometimes things go.
How did it actually feel to create all that, to see it come into life, to give birth to that?
Yeah, I mean, that, I think when you're in it, there are so many different things going on, so many details. I mean, I really do believe that doing business in India prepares you for anything. I mean, I use this German expression translated like it gets you to grow hair on your teeth. It is so kind of insane. So whilst I was in it, there was not much kind of patting on the back going, oh, look at what this amazing thing I've created. It was more of putting out fires and trying to keep everyone happy, trying to get through. I mean, I was doing this with who's now my ex-partner, you know, doing this with a partner and a small baby. And then in the third season, I was pregnant with the second child. So there were so many things going on. I didn't really go, oh, wow, I'm really living the dream. There were definitely moments, like all of us in life, where we just have to stop and be grateful for what we have. And I must say, I had an amazing time, and we did have some wonderful experiences with clients and you know, seeing this healing that was happening for clients, and just being in that bubble of Goa, living that kind of counterculture lifestyle on the beach, while, you know, all this stuff was going on in the rest of the world, the usual, you know, wars and all these things. We were just in this bubble. So yeah, it in retrospect, it feels like what an adventure. How brave we were to just go for it, you know, with a small baby. I mean, we were definitely, especially the Spanish family, my ex's family, were all saying, well, what are you taking a baby to the miseria of India for? They had this idea what India looked like, and of course Goa is it's very different to what a lot of people expect. So yeah, I mean, anyone who wants to do this, we all have different ways of living, you know, a dream life. And sometimes it is, you kind of end up, I do believe that when you live in the moment, what your passion is, it's like you accumulate more and more of that. It's a bit like the choices you make. You know, we're always at crossroads making choices. This is why for us globally, you know, we're living at a very interesting time, because it's all about the choices we make now as a collective. You know, more and more we're getting into the sense of it's not about me. It's about, you know, all of us together somehow navigating this crazy world, and viruses and, you know, conflict and, you know, despotic dictators who are like the aftermath of the patriarchal era, and this, you know, domination, control over mentality that is so unsustainable.
Now we're here in Ibiza, and you're running retreats in Ibiza, but also in other places. But why did you leave India?
Well, like I said, doing business in India is not very straightforward. I think we probably would have stayed longer if it weren't for the complications that kept arising, and my ex-partner had to deal with a lot of them, just being a man. I mean, for me, being a woman in India, I wasn't treated with the same kind of respect in business than he was. So a lot of the really nasty stuff, you know, we had one season where the police showed up at the resort at midnight going, "You're running a brothel." I mean, there was nothing brothel-like about it, apart from the fact you could say that we had mainly female clients. So they were just wanting corruption money, you know, so we paid them off and never heard from them again. I mean, those kind of things, it's very tiring over time. And I was about to have a second, you know, the family was growing. And it was mainly the choice of my ex, and we took on partners who we ran it with for a couple of years virtually. So I mean, we kind of took the bookings and they ran it on site. And yeah, it was a bit like for him, his India time was finished. He'd learned the lessons he needed to learn, and yeah, I think I probably would have done a few seasons more, but for me, being then a mother, I was very much focused as well then on, you know, I was also writing a book. So it's like the priority shifted, and then Ibiza came up. For me, Ibiza was already I was living in Ibiza when I went out to Goa that first time. So this felt like a much more, let's call it a more domesticated version of Goa, a more sane version, kind of wild too in certain respects because it's Spain, but not quite as I don't want any liability issues here, but you know, not quite as lawless as Goa.
So, when did you arrive here in Ibiza?
Well, actually, the first time I came to Ibiza, I was 7 years old. I sometimes joke that I brought my parents here on a package holiday. The pull was so strong. I had so much power at 7. No, and then I came in my 30s when I was London correspondent for Swiss TV, and I needed a holiday, so I came here, and I just fell in love with this Mediterranean-ness of, you know, Ibiza's like the quintessential Mediterranean island, the blue aqua ocean, the pine trees, the sand, the rocks, the light. I mean, there's no mistake why since the 60s and 70s when the hippies kind of discovered it, it's become this, you know, so attractive for so many people from around the world. But then I actually moved here when I left the Matrix, or when I left my TV job. So about 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And then did you coming here? Did you already have the idea to continue with retreats and still host retreats?
So again, it was kind of an accident the way the retreat business found me. So even before we went out to Goa, when I took a sabbatical when I left television to I wrote a book, and I just needed to do some deep inner listening, like what did I want with my life? Where did I want to take it? You know, one option could have been just get another media job and buy a flat in London and stay in that and, you know, do the career thing. But my inner artist told me, no, you are here to do something else. So, you know, I took the sabbatical, came to Ibiza and did a bit of karma yoga at a yoga place here on the island where I literally cleaned toilets. So I went from interviewing heads of state one year to the next year cleaning toilets on a retreat. And I did have my moments where I thought, what am I doing? And at that time, I'd never thought, oh, I'm going to set up my own retreat place. It was literally just, where can I live and where can I be more or less for free so that I can keep the savings I have going for longer and continue being an artist and all that. And then the whole India experience happened, and we came back to Europe, and I had my second child, released the book that is about, you know, having children after you know, the age that most people say you should have them. So having children in your like 40s, 30s, late 30s, early 40s.
What's the book called?
It's called Right Time Baby, The Complete Guide to Later Motherhood. So that, you know, was published and it's been translated into 6 languages and all that. So that was a good experience. And then I was actually approached by friends here on the island with a house that they thought in the off season, I mean, it's not really the off season, it's kind of the retreat season now, but at the time it was like this spring autumn window when they didn't have their summer rentals. So they approached me and said, do you want to do a retreat here? And my ex, of course, we'd been doing this business together in India, went, no, it's never going to work. It's not by the sea. It's too expensive to do retreats in Europe. You have to pay, you know, the staff costs are much higher than India. But I thought, well, I said to him, I have an idea, you know, because I just had my second baby. And I had a toddler, a 3-year-old, and I was pregnant with the 3rd child. So I'd put all the research from my book into practice. I was like 45 nearly. And I just thought, you know what, really came out of a need for mothers. Because here I was, a mother with 3 young children, kind of going insane. No retreat center wants you usually, because who wants children around whilst you're trying to meditate? So, you know, I responded to a need with myself, but also for a lot of other women. And I told my sister that I had this house, and it was basically like a group of friends. So she told her expat friends in Zurich, and within a week I had the house, you know, I had it full. And that was the first Holy Mama retreat in 2013.
So this was like going from India, hosting retreats and being more like organizing and then having a teacher and then doing something that's focused solely at mothers and kids.
That's
like that
right.
transition.
That's right. The place in Goa, we had this combination of like yoga holidays where you could just come and show up and book for 3 days or 4 days, and retreats where a teacher would come and you would book for that week with that specific teacher. So with the drop-in, we had our own on-site teachers who would come and teach, and the retreats were much more the groups where we had 17 huts, so we had space for both. And Holy Mama was very much you could say a niche, although, if you see how many millions of mothers there are in the world, I don't think it's a niche, but it's very specific. It's a retreat for mothers to come with their baby child and have a time to connect with themselves. A lot of women lose sight of themselves, and myself included, when they have a child, and a lot of women are on their own with their child and they're working and they have a lot of guilt about not spending quality time with their child. So this retreat is a kind of combination of being able to have time for yourself and still have these amazing bonding moments, like going to the beach with your child, being in a different environment, letting your child run naked on the grass, whatever you feel your child needs. So yeah, it just worked. The concept worked, and I've been doing it for 7 years, and I've trained retreat leaders from over 20 countries and 6 continents, and it's so needed.
And so, like, your focus, as I get it, has been always much more into creating this experience. So you're not a yoga teacher yourself. It's not about like actually what do I want to deliver as a teacher, but what do I want to create as an experience.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I think experiences are so important for us, especially at this time, because you can tell someone let's take someone who's working in a bank 8 hours a day. Right now, they're going on a crowded train, wearing a mask. They're in this kind of really not very nice environment for the human nervous system. And you tell them, oh, there's this place in the sun, you just do yoga, you eat healthy food, you're gonna feel great. They're gonna say, get away. Don't tell me about that. I don't want to know. It's a bit like saying to someone, you just need to relax when they're stressed. It doesn't work. You have to give them the actual experience. And that changes your mindset. That changes so many things. So for people to come and feel it in their own bodies, to feel how they feel when they eat nutritious food, when they're not just eating junk food, when they have an hour or an hour and a half, 2 hours to get into their bodies through yoga, or walking in nature, to be surrounded by nature, to be outside, that is what shifts, because they go back different. That's the transformation. That's why retreats are so magical, and that's why I believe we're all talking about the new normal now. I've been using this term new normal for a couple of years because I believe that kind of environment, if that could be the new normal for we don't even need a big percentage. I think it's about 11% is the tipping point of people on the planet you could say some people in Africa have that experience, and we don't need to sell them our capitalist consumer model because it's not really working. So I do believe that this retreat, there's a certain cohabitation aspect to it as well, where people realize that they're not, these individual pods on their own, cut off from the rest of the world, just going into from one cubicle to another, where we're kind of, we're here to support each other. We're here to also, you could even use the word hold each other, which you see on retreats when I do these women's circles. There's so much healing that needs to take place now for us as as humanity, and retreats offer that opportunity in such a powerful way. So yeah, I'm completely passionate about retreats, not because it's just some dream that is nice to be in. It's because I've seen it work over and over again the last 13, 14 years. Over and over again, people, it's life-changing.
Hi, this is a little note from your host. I'm super grateful that you are here and listen to our conversation. If you enjoy the show, why not become a member of Retreat Affairs? There's so much more content than in this free episode. As a member, you will get access to the full interview, you will be able to read the transcript, and have the links to everything that was mentioned throughout the show. But most importantly, you will help me to keep the podcast going. I started this as a project that's close to my heart. I'm passionate about the podcast, but it also keeps me busy quite a lot. By supporting me, you will help me to dedicate more time to this project and still be able to pay my rent and have some delicious plant-based food between recording sessions. Every bit of support is super welcome. And if you feel the love, don't forget to share this with your friends. Thank you so much for your time and your interest. Let's go back to the interview. Do you feel, is there something that has changed over this stretch of time, that's in the way what people need, or also in the way that how you want to create that experience?
I think that there's definitely this trend towards more authenticity in everything we do. And I believe also that, a lot of people talk about awakening, whatever that you want that to mean. But I do believe that there's this realization more in the mainstream that there has to be another way. We can't continue doing like we've been doing. That this work-life balance, it's become quite a sort of hip thing to we know that working those amount of hours is, especially if it's in a job you're not enjoying, more and more people are coming into being more, not everyone has to be an entrepreneur, but having this sense of you're not a slave for someone else. So I do believe that, retreats, there'll be all kinds of retreats, and I'm sure there are more commercial retreats, and there are these ones that bring a lot of fitness, that use fitness rather than yoga. And I think there's space for everything. Like, there are so many different needs and people on the planet. But I think that the main sort of gist of it is that it's a holiday with purpose. It's not just, you go away, you go in a new environment where alcohol is cheaper, you get drunk, you get sick usually when you're on holiday with that amount of stress, and you go home and you go back into the treadmill. That's, this is an experience, like we said before, where you get to reset, the yogic tradition, I think it's Sanskriti and the Ayurvedic, you get to reset your patterning. It's like the pattern's broken, and you can only really do that in a different environment. It's very hard to break a pattern if you're in the same rut and the same routine every day. So yeah, retreats are definitely, there's more of them now, and some people will sarcastically say, oh, the market's saturated. I don't think it is. I think it's a question of finding your niche and your speciality, but like how many coaches do we need? Well, there's a lot of healing that is being called for right now. So I don't think it's anywhere near being too much.
What is it that's different or that it's needed in a retreat that you host for mothers with their children compared to a regular retreat? What is the space that you have to create?
Well, there's a lot of unpredictability with children. So you kind of need structure, but in a different way than on a normal retreat. So you need to create space for everyone within sort of clear boundaries. The expansion, I do believe, when it's the Shiva Shakti dance, when the boundaries are clear, the expansion is greater. Obviously you need child carers, you need a team of I usually work with women, but there's nothing wrong with using men. but individuals who really love the work with children, who understand how it's not just a job, it's like it's a calling, it's being a, you know, children are so amazingly creative and innocent. It's a bit like we're kind of failing them with a lot of our current school systems. So that's a very important aspect. And then for the mothers, we do this thing where in the mornings they have time for themselves and the children, so they're separated from their child. And for some, it's the first time. So that, you know, you need a lot of psychological, I guess, understanding. Some of these women come on the verge of nervous breakdown, and you know, that's why you're in the way that you're holding that space for them on retreat, for them to really get to that point of where they sometimes do have a mini breakdown, so that they can, you know, break through, you could say, to you. I mean, it sounds kind of more extreme than it is, and sometimes it just involves crying and tears. So it's important to have really good facilitators there to support these individuals. It can be therapists, you know, sometimes a massage therapist as well. Is a lot of the ones that I work with, they have many different tools in their toolbox, so they would, you know, be able to speak to their client in a way that is very nurturing. I think nurture is probably an important word for the mothers, because mothers are so used to nurturing everyone else, but it's actually they need nurturing too. And for them to understand that you cannot give from an empty cup. So part of that experience that they have is seeing how much more patience they have with their own child once they have taken some time for themselves, you know, like having this yoga class, eating well. A lot of mothers eat, you know, rushing, and they're looking after everybody else but not themselves. So this is part of this experience, and it is that kind of, you know, as you say in German, aha-Erlebnis, you know, this moment of, that's what I got to do. And it's a bit like when you do a detox. You don't necessarily then just drink, you know, juice for the rest of your days, but you might change a little habit, you might change a little something to become a little bit more healthy.
What does this aspect of spending, mostly it's a week, together, also with other mothers, to have that moment or have that time together and really see each other and exchange?
Mm-hmm. That's a very important aspect of the retreats. And I think this definitely applies to the retreats with the mothers, but it would apply to all kinds of retreats. Because we are living in this still, you know, this old paradigm, you could call it, of competition and dog eat dog, and not trusting the other, right? So what for me, when these women come on the retreat, is I have a set of guidelines I hand them. They're like it's a bit like the circle, you know, the circle guidelines, the sacred space container, where, you know, we there's no tolerance. I have no tolerance for any kind of bitching, right? I'll use that word because women tend to be quite good at it, meant to, but especially this is the way women have survived in this patriarchal system. I mean, you know, take it to even the witch burnings, where it's not safe. It's just not safe. So you have to call out the others. So that is something that we completely break that, and for them to feel connected with each other, that first they have to feel safe. Right, they have to trust each other, and then it's like this heart opening that happens. There's this quote from the 13 indigenous grandmothers, who, you know, there are these grandmothers who have been passing on this indigenous wisdom, and it's when women, remember you can replace it with men too, but when women gather in close circles, they awaken the wisdom in each other's hearts. It's a very simple sentence, but it's actually what happens. right? When you create this container, I usually do the circle on about the second day in the evening, like they've already arrived, and you see the shift from before and after, the conversations that happen at the dinner table or at the brunch table. It's like you don't really have to do anything else after that, because the magic just happens by itself. And they start to open up. They tell each other stories. I mean, not all of them are ready to do that, but it's like, because it is such an accepting, tolerant space, you know, the guidelines are so important that they all understand them, that there is no judgment. You know, there's only respect for one another. And yeah, and I think for them to experience that reality, coming from this other, you know, competitive, everybody has their stories with the system of competition, whether it's from school or work. I mean, we all have stories that we internalize as normality, when actually that is not normality. Normality is us being able to be human beings, you know, be heart connected. I mean, that's like where the expansion comes in, that, you know, there's a lot of talk about it, but, you know, we need to feel it, we need to embody it, we need to experience it, to believe it, to trust it, to go that direction.
And you're also doing, sometimes you have retreats when the fathers are allowed into the retreat. How are they different?
Those retreats are actually really, they feel sometimes easier even when the fathers come. And I know I get sometimes questions from mothers who maybe have recently separated, and they're like, oh, this is going to feel really different with the fathers there, and I don't know if I want to come. And I wasn't sure at the beginning before I started it, but we've been doing it a couple of years now, and I've seen that actually it's not that much different, because the focus is still on the mothers. It's this matrifocal view. It's not like we want to replace patriarchy with matriarchy. It doesn't work that way. But this is this more of this, you know, put women and children at the center. Focus on them. You know, we're focusing on them. We're focusing on this life-giving, nurturing, you know, young babies, mothers. And the men are there kind of holding the space, protecting, supporting. So the guys that come, obviously, you know, they're kind of woke guys, because I mean, who would come on a yoga retreat for mothers unless you're feeling, you know, that is aligned for you. So the guys that come are usually really amazing men. They've come in, you know, to support their partners. And actually the women who come with their partners have probably the best time, because they have that extra support. So they have even more time to do the massages, and to, you know, they do like family trips to the beach, and it works out really well. And I love those weeks, yeah.
So those are still mixed. It's not that you only have women coming with their partners, but it's also single mothers that are coming. Okay.
Yeah, we mix them because for some reason, you know, that it's still a minority who want to bring their male partners. I mean, we are looking at doing some more family retreats and retreats with older kids, because, you know, it's, yeah, a lot of these holy mama babies who came 7 years ago are now bigger and at school, and it's not like they, you know, they still want to come on retreat, and my kids are bigger too. But yeah, dads are definitely very welcome. And I do think now that, you know, in this whole kind of third wave of feminism, or whatever you want to call it, this new, it's more of a sort of spiritual movement than it was before. At least I think that's the most powerful aspect now, is to bring the men on board in these conversations. It's not just the women, you know, carving out this new world. I think we need a lot of women in leadership just to restore the balance. It's still it's kind of the wrong kind of men who are in power still a lot of the time. And if you just look at the world situation now, the countries that have done the best through this crisis all have female leaders. I mean, it's kind of like more than a coincidence. At the same time, we've still got some of these old despots holding on to power, and, you know, like really like going back to medieval dictatorship style of rule. But that's as we adjust. I think it takes time, and but definitely this is not, we're not anti-men at all. We need everyone on board.
To me, it sounds like those retreats also require much more of preparation and much more of care and a bigger team. How do you find the people that you're working with? Like, what is it that you're looking for? What does your team consist of?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's one of those things that it's so important to have the right team and to have the right, because it creates the atmosphere. We call it the love field, the Holy Mama love field, that it's like everything, it's this resonant field, again, the word resonance and vibration. Because, if someone, it can take one insensitive comment from someone. And sometimes things, it's not always perfect. Sometimes someone has had a bad day. And so this is why there's a lot of, it's like I have to be in 50 places at the same time. And retreats are kind of full on when it's not just the needs of the mothers, but when you have child carers, there are individual needs of all the people working there. But the main thing is that if your vision is clear and you express it to them clearly, then they get it. And we have, there's been change over the years, but usually my core team, it's like there's an attraction element there. They seem to find me and we become very close. And yeah, there is a lot of preparation. There's a lot of admin as well. I mean, I went from doing every single email myself for 4 years whilst my children slept. I would go up to my little office and answer the emails at midnight. And I went from that to then realizing that, this is hundreds of bookings to process every year. I took on an assistant, a virtual assistant. So everything needs to be prepared, like, you need to know kind of each baby's sleeping rhythm and food allergies and all these things. So this is all in, Excel spreadsheets. And now we have an automated booking system as well, so that once a bit like a shopping cart, you can, if you want to come, which week you want to come, you can just do that automatically. And then you get the email saying that you've booked. I mean, technology has moved on from where we were 7 years ago, so all this is possible now, even if you do a smaller retreat. So yeah, it's quite a mechanism, and this is why I decided also from the years of doing this to pass this on to train others, because I don't want to be the only one carrying this torch. I do see there's a bigger need. And I want to be able to empower other women to do it. So it's not like a franchise where I go, you have to carry my name and, I'm the queen of the castle. It's more like, here, take my blueprint and run with it. And so now there are all these retreat leaders with their own brand doing amazing things in Poland and Thailand and England and trying to think of all the countries. We trained one in Egypt. So, this, it's like a refinement that has happened over the years. And it's not, people don't need to start from zero. There's already so much that has developed in this industry that, we can sort of jump in the middle. We don't have to start from zero.
You've seen this industry grow over the last 15 years, and probably at that time when you started it was still pretty small, and now it's getting bigger and bigger. But from what you are saying so far here, it really seems like you're super open in empowering others to go down that road. And do you think that, especially at that time, and maybe also with all this discussion that came up even before COVID about like the responsibility of travel, how we travel, why we travel, where we go. How do you see the retreat business in the future? How do you see the need for retreats? Also, what can we do with retreats in our way of travel?
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant question in the light of, our environmental kind of time bomb. I mean, who knows the future? But what we can see now, that what has happened this year, is there is this tendency to slow everything down. So slow travel, more sustainable travel. I mean, what we do, and it's kind of a tiny drop in the ocean, but what every client who books, there is a €10 amount that goes to planting trees. So there's certain things we can do to offset the carbon, but you know, it's a bit like the whole industry needs to change. We need to have aeroplanes that fly without fossil fuels, and the technology, we're just not there yet. So I do believe that, yeah, mindful travel, slower travel, you know, maybe these quick city trips are going to be less of, less. We have to see what happens with airlines. Maybe it's even, we really just do not know where this crisis is taking us. But if there's anything we can learn from it, it's that if we stop our activity and our production and our speed, if we slow it down, nature is able to renew and recalibrate. It's like we're going too fast. So I think travel is still very important, because I know a lot of nationalists and right-wingers will go, well, we just shut our borders and everyone stay home. That's not the answer either, because we need that. I mean, travel opens your horizon. There's this interchange, this cultural interchange. And also one of the kind of negative effects of this global warming situation is mass migration. So, you know, we need to be prepared for this. There's this cultural melting and meeting that is happening, and travel is very much a part of that. It's this understanding of each other and realizing that our basic needs are kind of all the same.
Mm. And still with I mean, you've been running your retreats in Ibiza here, you've done retreats in Bali with Holy Mama and in Morocco. With the situation right now, and also with your experience of running a center in India, have you thought about going back and just like opening a center again and just doing retreats in one space?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily pick Goa as the safest place to be. You know, now as with kids and my family, you know, my parents are still very fit and healthy, but they're in Switzerland. I do feel that Europe is kind of the place for me, and I think the way I'm doing it now, just having these couple of weeks a year. I mean, I still love going to Bali. I would love to do a retreat in Goa, but to actually have a physical retreat center right now, that's not really a priority for me. I mean, I'd need to have a couple of bestsellers under my belt to be able to go, okay, I'm just going to create this amazing hub for mothers where, I mean, what I'd really love to do, and this is one of my visions, is to extend this part of Holy Mama called Holy Mama Love, which is all about supporting women and children in crisis. So war zones, women who have been through the kind of trauma you just cannot possibly imagine what some people have been through, and be able to provide this kind of experience for them. But for that I'd need investors, if you're listening, or like I said, when my next book is finished and is, I mean, I need to have a different kind of income to be able to subsidize those kind of projects. So for now, in a way, there's this allergy of a fisherman who kind of suddenly has a fleet of lots of boats, but actually the simple life he had at the beginning with just one boat he had more freedom. So the more complex your business is, in a way, the less freedom you have, you could say. However, I do feel this calling and it's a bit like a mission to be able to kind of spread this to a point of where it touches more lives. So Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what, I mean, I'm kind of going step by step. We're in a very interesting time now where things can shift very quickly. So yeah, who knows?
So what is like one of the steps that you want to take next?
Well, I mean, my next book is definitely one of my top priorities, and continue. I'm doing some, online trainings.
What is it going to be about, the book? Are you?
Well, it's kind of, without giving the title away, it's a sort of heroine's journey. If you know the Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. So it's kind of, there's definitely some personal memoir in it. Let's say, I mean, this is how I'm pitching it. Untamed meets Eat, Pray, Love. Untamed is kind of the new, book that all the women are reading. So it's kind of little anecdotes. It's definitely a spiritual book, and it's about, what happens to women when they awaken to their true power. But it's not too esoteric, because I believe we've seen with this crisis what happens when people go off into the deep end, into this rabbit hole of this is a very harsh, I heard an astrologer call it new age paranoia. So in a way, it's split the spiritual community, and we realize how ungrounded a lot of these spiritual people are. So, what I'm putting together, it's a very much a grounded version of spirituality that can also appeal to people who maybe go to a yoga class once in a while, but they're not buying any of that weird shit, excuse my language. I think it's very important, because there's so much wonderful wisdom in spirituality, and we are just, we don't even understand, we're just kind of at the beginning of this journey, and so many people are put off by this. When you get into, it's just not for everyone. Some of this ascension idea, it's like enlightenment is all good and well, but we're having this bodily experience. We need to bring it into our bodies, bring it into our systems, ground it, bring it into our, living environment, bring it into our everyday lives, and not be like a monk in a cave. I mean, sitting for months feeling blissful. That's, it's not going to create social justice or equality.
How do you feel retreats can help with that?
Well, I mean, it can definitely show people a new paradigm. It can show people that humanity is all about, being together in something. It's this, co-creation, cooperation, coexistence, rather than this idea we've been sold, you could say, and we've all bought into it, no matter, what. Even the spiritual movement really bought into this individual, me, entitled, even if we're not aware of it. This is the way our capitalist, patriarchal system has gone. There's a couple, a few on the top, and many down below, kind of being enslaved to those with the money. I mean, I'm kind of breaking it down to simple terms, but it is, we've been sold this idea that we can keep extracting from the earth and just keep taking, and this is where this mother energy and the indigenous tribes, we need to listen to them. These are some of our new, definitely, leaders who are saying, look at the earth, what we've done, the blood of the mother, they call it. We've been extracting the blood of the mother until she's parched. You've got elephants dying in Africa en masse because the water levels dropped and the ice. And I mean, don't get me started on it, but we basically need to understand that we are in this together, and individual warriors are not needed anymore. We need to really look for solutions together. Cross-industry innovation is definitely something for the future. The astronaut talking to the doctor, the lawyer talking to the school teacher. I don't know, this kind of cross-insemination of the amazing technology we have on the planet. We're living in this time that we've never been so evolved in some respect. So it's a bit like our system, our politics are sitting in the dark ages. We need to bring them into this modern day and get out of this medieval mindset. And retreats can do that. In a very small, contained environment, they can show people this is possible. And it's just that, that's enough. And then everyone will go back to their, to their corporate job or to their, to their doctor's office and go, I might do this a little bit differently now, because our systems have to change from the inside out. It's not going to, sometimes systems change through a virus. Let's see.
So what is the change that is going to, or like, what are you looking forward after everything comes a little bit more to a state where retreats are going to be more possible, and what are you planning for?
Well, I do believe people are going to go even deeper, because a lot of people who were in denial, I mean, we've all been, a lot of us in this community, and definitely if you've been looking at the big astrology or any of the prophecies from the indigenous tribes, they knew that everyone's been saying this is going to come. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s where it was already 5 to 12. We had the whole nuclear thing going on and Chernobyl and all these things in the 80s. As a teenager, I was very aware that it was 5 to 12. We're now at about 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute to 12. So it's like wake up time, big time. So I believe that since this lockdown that we had, this global lockdown, even the people who were in denial, and there are still deniers out there, like some of these leaders who I'm not going to mention any names, but even the people who were like, oh, it maybe happen in 10, 20 years, I'm not going to worry about it now. They were like, uh-oh, it's like something shifted to a point of where everything that you thought you could depend on is suddenly not what you thought it was. So that, it's like it opens a window for change. And this is our window. I mean, you hear some of these, philosophers talk about this window we have right now. Let's not miss this window. And I don't think it was just the 3 months. I think it is a longer window. So I do believe those people who come on retreat, maybe there'll be more people looking for retreat experiences, and those who come, it's like we'll be able as facilitators to take them even deeper. And I do believe that your work as a facilitator, as a space holder, as a retreat organizer, it doesn't have to be very complicated. And I just started off doing it, like running an event, and a lot of people do, like, this is just a nice event. But the deeper you go into your own transformation, the greater, the stronger, the clearer the space you can hold for others will be. So that's why, there's a lot of wounded healers on this path too. And I'm not saying that, there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. But I can definitely see that the more you, really connect with your own, be it, shadow, integrating your shadows or whatever you're doing, whatever resonates for you. I mean, it might be just walking in nature and feeling blissful by doing that, finding your zen. The more you will be able to resonate that zen or that compassion for those coming on your retreat.
You've been talking about helping others to step into their true power. What was the moment that you felt you've been able to step into your power?
I've had a few, but there was definitely one that happened in Bali in 2016. I attended a women's conference that was organized by 2 single mothers from Canada, and they brought together 150 women, or maybe 250 from around the world, a lot of healers and coaches and therapists, and they called it the awakened woman. Now, none of us are awakened. We're all on the path. None of us are kind of there. But it was a very interesting conference in that they set a specific intention with that to open a portal to attract more divine feminine energy to the planet. One of them was quite cosmic. She's kind of really gone quite far that way now. But it was really quite remarkable because the keynote speaker was Eve Ensler, who, those of you who don't know her, she wrote the Vagina Monologues. She's a playwright from New York who had really serious sexual abuse. And she reclaimed her body through her writing. That play has been, I think it's been performed in something like 75 languages all over the world, in countries where you're not even allowed to use the word vagina in the title, where they had to go to parliament with the wives to court to get the play put on. I mean, you know, her story is quite miraculous. But because she was the keynote speaker, she brought this Kali-like energy of transformation to this conference. And I think every single woman who was there went through some kind of key awakening. And for me, I knew I had to go to this conference, and I defied everything, including a very disgruntled ex-husband who did not want me to go. It's a bit like he knew, she goes to this, I've lost her. And for me, it wasn't like that was that straightforward, but it awakened something in me that was so expansive. It's like he had no choice but to come on this ship with me. And he chose not to, which is fine. And, you know, everyone makes their own choices. And it did lead to the breakdown of our marriage, you could say, to some degree. It's a bit like when women get into their power, it's men need to decide to support them, to be on board with them, or leave. Because you can't be in competition when a woman gets into her power. You really need to understand that you're there to support her. It doesn't mean you're then her slave and you have to cook all the meals, but you have to believe in her vision. It can happen the same for a man, you know. It's not like this is women and men. It's happening more now to women for sure, but sometimes as a man, when a man awakens something in himself, it could be his divine feminine, and he has this idea and his partner's not on board with him, the relationship is kind of doomed. You know, it's like it's this resonance thing. So yeah, I guess that if you're going to say what was the moment, that was a moment. And again, it was an experience. I had this experience, and some of those experiences at that conference were pretty, I would say it was a bit like going through a portal to another dimension. And I'm not particularly, you know, I haven't had that many psychic experiences, but I definitely had this a bit like where the timeline changes and time suddenly disappears and you see the past, the future, the present. You see yourself molding kind of what's coming. It was a very interesting experience. I think there are many little moments in everyone's life where it's like you get more and more of your power back. And this is about, you know, this personal sovereignty. So at the same time as we are more cooperating, it's not like we're all going to disappear and not be individuals. In fact, we'll be even more individual in that, because we'll be much more embodied in our true self and in our sovereign being. It's like this kaleidoscope of you know, beautiful different colors. You know, we are all unique and individual, and we all fit together really beautifully. And the kaleidoscope changes every time you move it. You know, it's like we're not stagnant. It's like the universe is constantly evolving.
Well, it's quite fascinating talking to you, and I really, really enjoyed it. But I also know that we are running a little bit out of time, but I still want to give you a last chance or a last moment to express. Is there anything that you want to express? Is there anything that you're looking forward to? That you want to communicate to our audience?
Well, you know, I think I've said a few things that hopefully resonated for people, and that must be the buzzword in this talk. But I would just say, you know, it's very hard sometimes to make decisions from our mind, and a lot of us don't have the kind of recipe of what is my true self. So I would just encourage anyone who's listening to explore what that means for you when you are in a crisis moment, or in a moment where you need to make a decision about something, or when you are looking for a new path, to get into your body. Like, you know, maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's doing a yoga class. Just be in deep stillness with yourself so that you can hear your inner whisperings. Now, some of us are intuitive, some of us are more instinctive and some of us are more emotional. I'm taking this from this human design system, and I think it's quite precise because it's using a lot of different technologies like quantum physics and astrology and I Ching. And so, you know, if you're emotional, you go through a process to make a decision and you can't rush it. So it's like we're all, even again, we're all individual, but I do believe that for every person to know what works best for you, and then you can more and more go into being yourself. And the more we are all ourselves and in our bodies, the more we are then responding to others and to life in an authentic, genuine way, rather than in a conditioned way, in the way our mother was, in the way our teacher was, or in the way that, you know, we've been led to believe is the right way. And that, I think, that allows for much more heart connection, and also, you know, the brain and the heart. We know that the heart has so much resonance, I think 50 times more than the brain. So it is very much, you know, it's like we need to bring the energy more down rather than in our heads. We just need to bring it down the body into the heart and into the women, the womb, for the men, the hara, and just be more grounded. Yeah, I think that's kind of the final note, if there was one.
Thank you so much, Claudia. It was really a pleasure to have you here, and I'm looking forward to have you back at some point and have a little bit more time and space to explore more of what you are doing, all the beautiful work that you're doing. And yeah, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, I look forward to coming back with, and yeah, let's see what happens next.
Dear friends, this was another episode of the Retreat Affairs podcast, this time with Holy Mama Claudia Spahr. If you want to find out more about Claudia and her retreats, go to their website holymama.info or become friends on facebook.com/holymamaretreats or follow her on Instagram @_holymama_. You will find all the names and links to everything we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google or Spotify or any other podcast platform. Or head over to YouTube, where you will find us too. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified about the next episode. And give me a chance to ask you for your support. I make the podcast with lots of love and dedication, but it's also a lot of work. It would mean the world to me if you could help me to keep this work going. Please consider going to retreataffairs.com, where you can leave a little donation or subscribe to get exclusive content that will only be available to members. This will allow me to continue the podcast and bring you more wonderful and inspiring stories like the one you just heard. Thank you for your support and thank you for listening. Until next time, your host, Sascha Kaus.